I'm going to show you basic configuration of an IOLink master, how to configure IOLink devices using PACTware, and then how to configure them from RS Logix 5000. Now, as a disclaimer, I'm no expert, and this is just what worked for me, and I hope it can help you. Now, for the hardware I'm using a Turck TBEN-S2-4IOL IOLink Master, and I'm configuring a Banner LTF laser sensor. I imagine the configuration, though, would be very similar among other Turck IOLink Masters and other Banner devices. Aside from the sensor and IOLink Master, you're going to need all the requisite cables to connect the sensor to the master, and the master to power and to the internet. Or if you have a USB IOLink Master, you just need to plug it into your laptop. Now, after you have all that, you're going to need the IP address of the IOLink Master, and you can Wireshark it out if you don't know it, or you can use the Turck service tool to help find it. It will scan for all Turck devices on the network, although it crashed every time I tried to use it, but it may be able to work for you. Just download it, install it, boot it up, and search for the devices. But I already know the IP of mine, and if you punch it in, the page comes up, then everything should be working properly, and you can get quite a bit of useful information off this page. And if you log in with the default password of password, then you can change any of the parameters, and you can even execute a reboot from here if you want. So if you want to change your IP to something new, now's the time. Once you have the IP of your master, you're going to need a lot of different softwares, starting with one called Turck Software Manager. The link for this is in the description, along with all of the other softwares that I use in this. Come here to downloads. It's the only option. Install it. Click through all the prompts. And you're going to use this software to install most of the other softwares we're going to be using. All the softwares you're going to need are under the IOLink section. You're going to need PACTware if you don't already have it, though I would recommend installing PACTware from their website instead of from here, as when I tried this, it stalled out for a few hours, although it did eventually work. But if you want to, you can install it from here. But I won't be installing it from their website. I use PACTware 4. I don't know about other versions. I don't imagine it would make that much of a difference. You're also going to need DTM for IODD configurator. You're going to need DTM for field bus IO systems, this one here. And finally, you're going to need the IODD library for your sensor series. So for me, it's this one right here, the LTF series. And once you have all those selected, download. And this may take quite a bit of time, especially if you download a PACTware. Just give it some time and it will think through it. Once it's finally all done, it's going to give you all the click-through prompts for all of your softwares. So just click through all of these, signing your soul away to the software developers. You don't need to make any changes in any of these. The defaults will work just fine. Now, once you have all of your softwares installed, you're going to need to come over to the IODD DTM configurator. And this is where you need to add your IODD files for every single sensor that you want to configure using PACTware. And if you already have them, for instance, for mine, you can download the IODD file from its web page, but you don't need to. And if you don't have it, you can get it from the IODD finder, but if you do, you can pull it from a folder, or you can pull a collection of them as well. But if you don't have it, then you can go to the finder, get data, and this will take a little bit of time to find it, so just be patient. Then once it finally finds all of their items, you can look through this massive list if you want, but you can narrow it down searching by vendor name, or if you have the device ID, you can search by that too. I'm just going to look for Banner, and I'm looking for the LTF series. Now there's version 1.3 and 1.4. I've used 1.3. I don't know which one of these works, but you can find more information in the manual of your sensor. Then once you have your data file you need, click Add Selected. And it will pop up here on your list. You can repeat that process for as many sensors as you want, and once you have them all, you don't need this anymore. Now once you have all of your data files configured, this is where you're going to need PACTware. If you downloaded it from the Turck Software Manager, then you're fine, but I'm going to download it from the Turck website here. Extract it. Click through the prompts. Then when she finally opens up, we're going to want to come up here to device catalog and update device catalog. If you just downloaded it, you shouldn't need to do this, but if you already had it, after you download your data files, you're going to want to update the catalog. Then host PC, add device. You're going to want Ethernet. If you're over serial, presumably you would want RS-232. And if you're using USB, you would need to download, if you're using a USB IOLink Master, you would need to download a different software from the Turck Software Manager. But if you're over Ethernet, you're going to want the service Ethernet. Double click it. And if you have multiple networks, you're going to want to select the right network. We only have one here, so this should be fine. Now, two things you can do. You can come up here and you can search for devices. You can see here it pops up all the different Turck devices here. Or if nothing shows up, you can add device, and you can manually find the IOLink master that you want to connect to. Now I'm using a TBEN-S2-4IOL right here. You can see the IP matches. You would want to punch in the IP that you configured earlier. And now it automatically populates all the ports on the IOLink master. And this is where you're going to want to know which port the device that you want to configure is plugged into. So I know that mine is configured on port 3, but you can tell this a little bit from the IODD configurator page on the IOLink master that we logged into. You can see which ports have devices connected to them. It doesn't tell you a whole lot about the device, but you can tell if you only have one which port is plugged into, or you can just look at the IOLink master itself. Regardless, I know mine's on port 3. So if you come over here, right click, add device, and you're going to want to throw in the data file that you added from the configurator For me, it's the LTF series. Then once you have that, right click, connect. You should get all greens here. You can double click and it will pull up all of the different parameters that you can configure from your device with different pages on the side here. And you can initiate a read to pull the currently configured parameters from the device. You may get an error like this. I'm not sure what this is. I wouldn't worry about it, just the software overreacting, surely. And this is it. This is everything you could possibly want to get to. So say for instance you're a sucker for the imperial units, you can switch to inches, make any other changes you want, then write to the device, and it should update right away. And this is it. If all you want to do is configure your devices from PACTware, you can do everything you need from here for all your different devices. But if you want to integrate your configuration into RS Logix 5000, stick around and I'll show you how to do that next. Before, however, we start that, we are going to need more files. And this is where it varies significantly by manufacturer. Banner has decently well integrated support, as does IFM and Pepperell and Fouche as far as I can tell. But first, because it's Rockwell, we are going to need an EDS file for the IOLink Master. So over to the Turck website, downloads, configuration files, you should find an EDS file and catalog for the IOLink Master you're using. I don't know about other masters, but I found it here for Turck. Now, there are two different ways that you can add your IOLink Master to your RS Logix program as an Ethernet device. One I would recommend and one that I would not. I would not recommend that you add it from a catalog. Even though it is way easier, it will not allow you to format the data within 5000. It just lets you see the raw data from the master, which isn't much help unless you know how to format it and you don't care about any of the configurations of the device, only the process data, because the configuration properties aren't stored on the master. But if you want the easy way, you can create a new project by import on 5000 from the Turck catalog, and this is your firmware revision of 5000. And when you do, it's going to look something like this. You just find your device in the list, and then assuming you have another program off to the side, assuming the controller's offline, you can just drag the module right here, and it will create the Ethernet device. And then once you configure it, give it an IP, that's all you need, you're good to go. It'll start pulling data once you go back online. However, if you want any sort of format or control to your data, you're going to need to go the long way around, which is going to require even more files. So for this, you're going to need to go to your sensors webpage, and you're going to need to find a set of AOIs. These AOIs are going to give you everything you need to integrate your control into 5000. So once you download them and pull them off, now you have everything you need to get started, and next you're going to need to create a new Logix program. I have mine here, I just called it IOLink test. With your program up and running, it's time to add the EDS, so go to Tools, EDS Hardware Installation. We're just going to flip through the wizard here that should pop up. Register an EDS file, register a single file, and you're going to find it in the TBEN-S Ethernet IP folder under EDS. You're going to need to look for your EDS file. Just going to use this one. Everything looks good. Now we can go ahead and open up links to test a connection. communications, configure drivers. We're going to want a new Ethernet devices. You can name it whatever you want. You're going to want to add the IP of the link master you're using. Apply, okay, close. And this tells you that the EDS file installed correctly and it is successfully connecting to your master. Now we can come back to our program, new module, and with the EDS file in, you should be able to search. I found mine. If you wanted to, you could have registered the entire file of EDS files and you would have a list here. We'll create. You don't need anything fancy here, just a name and an IP. And everything else is already configured for you. That's it. You have your master here with the tags made. It is worth noting that if you're unable to connect to your master and it shows a red X and links, you may be able to restart it from its home page and that could fix the problem. Otherwise, check your network and get that resolved before you move on. But now it's time to take a look at the AOIs that we downloaded. Now there's a lot here, and there's a couple different for each one. Now if you just want to know the basic information on the sensor, so for the LTF, if you just want the value the sensor is reading and its 2 digital outputs, all you're going to need is the process data, and you don't need the other two. But if you want to integrate configuration, you're going to need both of these as well. This Banner device's AOIs comes with detailed instructions on how to add the AOIs and how to configure them. So you can just go and follow these instructions if you want. They worked for me, but I will be going through a complete configuration of that into 5000. With your program open, it's time to add your AOI instructions. I already have mine added for the sake of time. You can see which ones I used here. There may be a couple different options depending on your device. In general, the V2s will work with each other, even if it's a V2.1, and V4s will work with each other, but V2s don't work with V4s. And for the IOLink master, you're going to want to make sure that you add the AOI of your manufacturer. So I went into the Turck folder for that. So for starters, we're going to start with the process data, because the process data doesn't need the other two AOIs. This one can just work on its own, and this is just going to give you some basic information from the sensor. So we're going to pull the instruction out, and we're going to add a couple new tags. I'm going to name this LTF IOLink Master 5 process data status. I'm also going to add 3 because the LTF is plugged into port 3. We don't need any configuration. And add another new tag. We're just going to call this process data. And for the byte swap, some masters will do something called byte swapping. You don't need to know what it is, just I'll throw up a chart to show you which manufacturers use byte swapping, which ones don't. But I'll tell you what to set this to. And the last thing we need is a CPS instruction. And for the source, we're going to want to go into the IOLink Master 5 that you configured from your Ethernet devices. Data. And there's a ton of bits here. But you're going to need to change this to a number depending on which manufacturer master you use and which port you have it plugged into. I'm going to throw up another chart for you to reference. For the destination, you want to come down here to PD. You're going to want to throw it in right here. PDI underscore DT 0. And for length, we're going to want a length of 4. And that should be everything you need. Your communication. Throw it in. When you go into controller tags here, you don't need to worry about the status, but if you drop down here, should probably change this to the right value. It'll show all zeros if you didn't configure it correctly. When you have them configured correctly, you're going to get your data popping up here. And these are your two digital outputs for the LTF, and this is the data that it displays. Now that's great, but if you want to get your parameters going, we're going to need to set up the other two AOIs. Once again, I got the IOLink Master AOI from this folder. I use the T2V2, but it's worth noting that I believe this one requires firmware version 3.3.1 on the master, which you can find right here. So I have 3.4, so that's not going to be a problem. But you can get all the information you need from the instructions here found in the folder. So we're going to add a new rung. I'm going to start with the link master instruction. Just going to name this master 5 status. And we need a read and a write. So read, write. We're just going to call this link master 5. This is the one we actually care about. We can leave the status the same, but we are going to need to do some configuration for the read and write. Keep the message type SIP generic and the service type custom, but we are going to want a service code of 4B. And for source, go to your IOLink master that you added here, not the one you added down in your Ethernet devices. Source data and destination data. Then over to communications tab, browse out your Ethernet device, apply OK. It's very similar for the write. SIP generic custom, but this time I want a service code of 4C. Same for communications. And with all that, we are going to need to go to the controller tags, find your tag you made, go to port data, and you want to set the port controlled values of whichever port you have a device plugged into to 1. Now, sometimes the ports count from 0, and sometimes they count from 1. I know for Turck, for this it counts from 1, so plugged into port 3. Set this bit to 1. I would recommend looking at your master and seeing how the ports are labeled. It should be the same, but if you're having issues, you can try swapping them. And port 3 is the only one I have configured, so keep it like that. Now we're going to need another rung, and this is going to be our parameters. We're going to need some more tags. Same naming convention. And for port data, you're going to want to find the link master that your device is plugged into and just select port data. And for the port, same thing as before. Sometimes it counts from 1, sometimes it counts from 0. I know it counts from 0, so I'm plugged in port 3. And the other thing that we are going to want to do, this is just a house cleaning, we're going to want to reset these on the system first scan. That just keeps everything running nicely. We're going to reset both the Link Master 5 and our LTF device parameters. And these will change their values automatically as it thinks through the reset. And that should be everything, unless I configured something incorrectly, which we'll find out very shortly. Once you're done, you don't need to worry about the link master anymore once you have your ports. I've noticed that you may need to reset which ports are controlled when your controller goes offline, so just checks that. You can add that in as logic. Check your parameters. You should see a 1 here. If you drop this down, here's all your data. Even gives you a string here. You can throw this straight into your HMI of what it's reading currently. But this doesn't update from real time. If you want to update it, you're going to need to put in a command here. I'll throw up another chart of different commands and what they do. But one should read all of the data, which isn't going to change because I have mine sitting in a room somewhere. But if the value here changed, it would change. And if you want to change your write data, so input type, sleep, units, read, you can change that value here. And if you want to write, the command is 41. If you want to know what some of these do, there are descriptions over here for many of these which help you. So for instance, for display read, 0 is normal and 1 will invert the screen. Although it is worth noting that when I did this, I was not able to get display units to be able to change. So if you want to do that, you can do that from PACTware, but for some reason I couldn't get this to work. But all of the other things worked. You can change the history, sys, or the set points here. And that's it. That's all of the configuration right here in 5000. Hope this helped.